Robot Framework Libraries 201 to 300. Robot Framework Screen Capillary Robot Framework Test Library for taking screenshots. Robot Framework Selenium Wire Robot Framework Keyword Library Wrapper Around Selenium Wire Library. Robot Framework Xcelibary Robot Framework Keyword Library Wrapper Around X Selenium Python Library. Robot Framework Compare a generic library to compare two HTTP requests using Robot Framework. Robot Framework Metrics Custom Report for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Data Extension of Robot Framework's DateTime library. This library allows for assertions related to dates and times. Robot Framework AutoIt Library AutoIt library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Test-Stack Library PyPI tutorial. Robot Framework PIO Robot Framework Library for interfacing GPIO pins on executing robot files on Raspberry Pis. Robot Framework Jira Sweener an automatic Jira issue opener for Robot Framework. Robot Framework SUTS Library Alchcalandra Robot Framework Test Library for SOAP-based services. Robot Framework Obfuscator and Obfuscator for Robot Framework code. Robot Framework HTTPX Robot Framework Keyword Library Wrapper Around HTTPX. Robot Framework OpenShift CLI Robot Framework for OpenShift interactions via CLI. Robot Framework Sakuli Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Circlisi Library a Robot Framework extension to run Circlisi pipelines. Robot Frameworks Library Robot Framework Test Library for SSH and SFTP. Robot Framework Allure Client Robot Framework Client to control Allure reporting service using REST API. Robot Framework Hub Static create robot keyword documentation as static HTML. Robot Framework opens Robot Framework Client to control remote device farm using Opens Farm API. Robot Framework Dispot Distributed Test Executor for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Interpreter Utility Functions for building a Robot Framework Interpreter. Robot Framework Mail Reader Send and read mails using Robot Framework. Sphinx Contrib Robot Framework extension for Sphinx. Robot Framework Executor a GUI-based robot test executor. Robot Framework Sauce Labs a library for working with Sauce Labs. Robot Framework PY Windows GUI library a Robot Framework library for automating the Windows-based GUI applications. Robot Framework Xlittle Robot Framework library for Excel XLSX file format. Robot Framework Duck only create test documentation without technical details. Robot Framework Crease Library a REST API automation library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Mongo Beason Library Mongo database utility library for Robot Framework that uses Beason serialization utils. Robot Framework PrimeraBot. Robot Framework HubELI web server for Robot Framework assets. Robot Framework Library a Robot Framework library that utilizes OpenCV image processing and PyTesseract OCR. Robot Framework StackTrace a listener that prints a stack trace to console to faster find the code section where the failure appears. Read Output XML Robot Framework Reader the output XML from Structure Robot Framework output. Robot Framework Page Object Library. Robot Framework library that implements the page object pattern. Robot Framework Debugger. A robot framework listener to try keywords and pause execution on failure. Robot Framework Notifications. Send notifications to Slack or Mattermost using Robot Framework. Robot Framework Crowbot. Robot Framework Crypto. A library for secure password handling. Robot Framework Web Screens library to simulate different web screen resolutions using Selenium library. Robot Framework Requests Extension. Request library extension. Robot Framework Shared Mailbox. Read shared mailboxes in Exchange 365 using Robot Framework. Robot Framework Jenkins library for Robot Framework for Jenkins interaction. Robot Framework Image Library. Image processing library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework QStats report for keyword statistics. Robot Framework Heist library. Extended visual verification testing library for Robot Framework using Appletl Python SDK I Selenium. Robot Framework OTP. Robot Framework OTP Authenticator. Robot Framework NUP library. Robot Framework keywords for HTTP requests. Robot Framework TestRail Correct Link. Robot Framework library, listener and pre-run modifier for working with TestRail. Robot Framework Puppeteer Percy. Puppeteer Percy library is a Puppeteer Percy client library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework CaptureFast. CaptureFast bridge library for Robocorp. Robot Framework O2 Utils package for testing needs. Robot Framework Netadder. Robot Framework keyword for the Python Netadder library. Robot Framework Excel Data Driver. Excel Data Driver is the Excel data-driven testing library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Robops. Robot Framework's library for creating and running DevOps tasks easily and efficiently. Robot Framework Report Portal. ECI listener for Robot Framework reporting to Report Portal. Robot Framework Remote Runner. A library that provides the ability to execute Robot Framework test suites on a remote host. Robot Framework Serial. Robot Framework test library for serial connection. Robot Framework IMAP Client Library. IMAP Client Library is a test email library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Mainframe 3270 Extended Mainframe Test Library for Robot Framework based on Altron's library. Robot Framework Germanium Library. Germanium Library. Robot Framework Historic Custom Report to display Robot Framework historical execution records. Robot Framework Clean Utility Scripts for formatting Robot Framework code. Robot Framework Impansible. Robot Framework Library to access all Ansible internal modules. Robot Framework KiCad Library. Robot Framework KeyCAD Library. Robot Framework Historic Parser to push Robot Framework execution results to MySQL. Robot Framework Image Horizon Library. Cross-platform Robot Framework library for GUI automation based on image recognition. Robot Framework Do Assist Library. Robot Framework Does is library. Robot Framework Zookeeper Manager. Robot Framework library for working with Apache Zookeeper. Robot Framework's Flip CSV library for Robot Framework written in Python 3. Robot Framework ICE Library 3 Visual Verification Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Listener Library. Robot Framework Listener Library. Robot Framework PyKafka. This is a robot framework wrapper around PyKafka, the best Python Kafka library out there as of this writing, and the only one that supports Kafka 1.0 through and 2.3. Robot Framework Excel XLSM. Robot Framework Library for working with Excel documents. Robot Framework Init. Robot Framework Init is a scaffolding which can help you install most robot framework need, and it can create an empty project. Robot Framework Init Chinese version. Robot Framework Selenium Mousy extensions. Extra mouse actions missing from the standard Selenium library. Robot Framework RPA. Robot Framework Library MQTT Keyword Library. Robot Framework. Robot Framework Test Force. Robot Framework Mini Framework. Robot Framework TestRail Reporter. Robot Framework TestRail Reporter. Robot Framework Calculator extension for Robot Framework converting data packet, time str and % into numeric objects. Robot Framework Mock Server. Robot Framework Library for Mock Server. Robot Framework Cassandra Library. A Robot Framework Cassandra database library. Robot Framework Excel. Robot Framework Library for working with Excel documents. Robot Framework Oracle. Robot Framework Library for working with Oracle database. Robot Framework Couchbase Library. A robot framework library to work with Couchbase. Robot Framework I18N Library. I18N Library Translator Library for support in Robot Framework. Robot Framework BrowserMa Proxy Library. BrowserMa Proxy Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Quad Library. WD Library. Robot Framework Playwright. Robot Framework Client Static Analysis Tool for Robot Framework Plain Text Files. Robot Framework Excellent Library. A really useful robot framework library for working with Excel 2010 files. Robot Frameworks Library Y3 CSV Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework MongoDB Library 3 Mongo Database Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Thycotic. Robot Framework Thycotic. Robot Framework Console Dialogues. A pure console replacement for the Robot Framework Dialogues library. Robot Framework Historic Listener. Listener to push Robot Framework execution results to MySQL. Robot Framework Selenium Proxy Capture Requests/responses generated with Selenium's WebDriver. These were Robot Framework libraries 201 to 300.